Welcome to Inside the Set with SETDECOR. Inside the Set is a series that focuses on the design and decor of stories that excite us and ignite our imaginations, where we get to discuss the collaborations between production designers and set decorators, and hear firsthand accounts of how those works of art came to be, from their inception to ideas on the page through completion, where we sit in the dark and experience them collectively.
Welcome to Inside the Set with SETDECOR. I'm Andrew Baseman, SDSA, and today I'm pleased to welcome set decorator Patricia Cuccia SDSA and production designer Judy Becker to discuss their amazing collaboration on A24's epic post-war period drama, The Brutalist. Patricia and Judy, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Patty, I'm going to start with you. The film begins with stunning Bauhaus-inspired opening credits, which immediately set the tone. Were you inspired by any specific artists or designers from that period?
Well, there was quite a bit. I mean, I think that it was like Mies van der Rohe, Marcel Breuer. I think I was really inspired by photography that Judy could speak to more because like Saul Leiter photographs and beautiful, beautiful photography that she had as research and that I think Brady had also brought forth. And I found that that was really inspirational. And then when I was watching the film, I was seeing those photographs, which I thought was incredible. I was really, really excited about that because it really captured that the working person in America at the time and the immigrant experience and everything else. But I thought it was done so well, and I was really, really impressed by that.
I was wowed by the epic nature of this film and found it hard to believe all that you achieved on such a modest budget. What were some of the biggest challenges you had to overcome by shooting post-war Pennsylvania in contemporary Budapest?
Well, I think mostly well, first of all, in Budapest, and in probably all over Central Europe, mid-century design and most modern design is different. So we weren't able to draw on the prop house for the most part. For the hero things had to be brought from Toronto. And it was really also hard to know what I was going to need besides knowing, Judy mentioned right away, you're going to need to bring the American, like Americana colonial furniture, because we had seen what was in the prop houses and it wasn't right. It was a little chunkier. It wasn't cherry wood. It didn't feel, and the thing too is that we needed to have it look like it was a furniture showroom that one person made everything. So it all had to look similar. So, I mean, the challenge for me was how do I get what we need there? And it was decided, and it was a big thing. We had to have the producers involved, that I could have a container and we would ship from Toronto a container full of furniture. So I went around trying to guess, and Judy was helping me about what we were going to need besides the stuff from the furniture showroom, because we thought we might need some fabrics, things that typically you would see in America at that period that was so important to have, and it's different. The wallpapers there are different, fabrics are different, and as I was saying, like lighting, furniture, it's different.
And I wanted to comment on that because it wasn't, the furniture in the furniture showroom wasn't scripted that way, but it was an idea I brought to Brady. I think once we were in Budapest, that to emphasize how Americanized Attila had become and how different from Laszlo's aesthetic the furniture showroom was, to have this super, super American furniture, you know, the furniture that I'm sure we all have one family member that had this in their house. And you can't find it in Europe. I mean, I don't think you could even find it in, you know, Paris or Italy or London or someplace that has a lot more filming, unless some production brought it over and left it there. But I looked at everything they had in the Budapest prop houses before Patty got there. And then I also sent her some files and I was like, I'm sick of looking at this. Can you look at these? And she kind of was like, Judy, there's computer monitors in this. So it was like, I know, I'm tired of it. So, but we were going back and forth a lot and about what she should bring. And like, she was showing me a lot of great pictures. We filled up a container, right? I mean, it's not like there was extra space in there.
Yeah, and guess who loaded the container? Me, with
Yeah.
helpers, but still I think I've never worked so hard in my life. I had a storage locker. I would drive around Ontario. I would sometimes go, a lot of people, because we were buying off of Facebook Marketplace and Kijiji and all these people, that they were working during the day. So if I wanted it, even though it was only going to be $10, I would have to drive out into the country at 8 o'clock at night when they got home from work. And I would bring my daughter, and I had friends that I would get. We rented a truck, and I would literally be going out and filling this truck and then going back to the storage locker, unloading it. And then the next day I'd be off to some other destination like this. And I mean, it's actually kind of hilarious because, I was going, wow, I can't believe I'm doing this. This was like what I did as a PA back in, one of the first films I worked on.
I
But
hope they paid you as a set dresser, and you got an extra credit for that.
it was, but so important. And the truth is that I was enjoying finding the pieces because I could see it. When I'd see it, it would be like, this is going to feel like it works with the other furniture.
I'm curious how much prep time you had for the project, and did you start working on it, I assumed, in the US before arriving in Budapest? And you say you were able to ship a container. Did you bring things like door hardware and light switches, and were you warned ahead of time that that didn't exist in Budapest?
Yeah, well, I kind of figured that. And Judy also helped me with a lot of that, with what she was finding, because she was there ahead of me. So she was able to kind of say, but I also figured, I knew already that they just don't have the same light switches and that sort of.
And you had some decorator friends working there too, right? That gave you some heads up, I think.
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I had people that had been working there before, and say they were giving me some advice.
Judy, I've got a question for you. Architecture is arguably a main character in the Brutalist. What was your inspiration for the community center that Adrian Brody's character Laszlo Tott designed, that you actually designed? And
yes, I did.
Were some of the interiors actual locations that dictated what the exteriors would look like?
No, it was the opposite. I designed the exterior and the interior first. That was the first thing I did on the movie, and I did that so that Brady asked me to do that. It was in the spring of 2022. The plan was to shoot the movie that summer, and it ended up pushing like 9 months, I think. So when you asked Patty how much prep time she had, I actually had a lot of mental prep time, which was unintentional but great, because you rarely get that these days, as we know. And creatively, it's a real gift to have that. So the first thing he asked me to do was to design the institute so that we could plan what parts of it we were going to build. And he was never thinking we were going to build the whole thing, life size, which was a good thing to hear. And so I went home and designed it, and I wasn't I knew Brutalist architecture pretty well already because it was something I'd been interested in for a long time. And like anyone who has known me for a long time would know that about me. Like it's, and a lot of people have joked to me like, oh, you must have like conjured that movie into being, So, but I was thinking the things that inspired me were more things I had to incorporate into the building, like the architecture of concentration camps and the church aspects of it, and sort of the back and forth between Laszlo's history and the functions it's serving in Protestant America was something I worked on a lot and thought about a lot. So incorporating those into that style of architecture. And it was a very deceptively simple design, and there were for sure things I was influenced by, but more bits and pieces, kind of like you never see this in the movie. Well, you see it a little bit, but the entrance to the Institute in my head, and in the model, is very, very steep. And I was influenced by this architect named Harry Weiss, who designed the Washington, D.C. subway system. And I don't know if you've ever been on it, but it's incredibly steep and a little scary the first time you go on it, because it's just like down into the ground. And that was how, in this movie, in like imaginary land, you enter the building. So there were a lot of things like that. I really thought about it as a piece of architecture and not as a set, because I was trying to inhabit Laszlo's mindset as an architect and not my own mind as a production designer. And because they're pretty different things, I think. And all of that was really helpful for when we went on to scout locations and other things to serve as pieces of the Institute, because we already knew what the interior design was and then what would work and what wouldn't. We did tweak some little pieces to match some interiors we found. Like, we shot some pieces at a Brutalist sort of, I think it was built as a house, and now it was a museum way out in the country, like 4 hours from Budapest. And it had a window at one end of it, and we added that to the model just so it would match the house a little bit. But aside from that, we didn't make a lot of tweaks in that way. But the Institute was played by a model, like not the model in the movie, but another model that we built as to be the Institute, and then also a lot of different locations. It's played by many, many different things.
Well, the reveal of Van Buren's redesigned library was absolutely stunning. I love how the room is transformed from the red velvet drapes and hefty Art Deco furniture to the soft shears, the louvered bookshelves, and the single metal lounge chair. This is for both of you. What was your inspiration for this elegant transformation? Because it really was from one extreme to another.
Patty did an amazing job of doing the Art Deco, and I'll just give the background and then I'll let you speak to that, Patty. Originally, I think there's a little backwards. We went and pre-scouted the one mansion near Budapest that could work for Van Buren's house. And the one room that seemed like it could work for the library was this actual like glass winter garden that was all glass except for the wall where we're standing looking into the library. And I was looking at it thinking, how am I going to make this into a library? Like, it was a little bit of a puzzle, except that I found a solution immediately. Like, I was looking at it and I thought, oh, I'm going to build these walls out of wood, forced perspective, and make these shelves that are uniform and open up. It just came to me in a flash, and that almost never happens, like certainly not when you're under pressure on the location scouting with people. Like, probably the first time it's ever happened for me, but it happened. And no one was pressuring me. I just knew it. And I talked to Brady about it, and he liked the idea, and that was that. That's how I remember it anyway. And I'm going to leave that as my memory because it's a good memory and it works. And so it was a pretty easy solution. Executing it wasn't so easy, but it was the concept from the moment we scouted that. And then the before of it, which was, there were details like the chair and designing the ceiling and everything that we worked out later, but that basic concept of the way the shelves are constructed and the way they changed the shape of the room came when we scouted it. Mm-hmm. And then the before, the sort of heavy, dark Art Deco before, was an idea that came from understanding who Harrison was as a character, because initially, and I'm sure Patty felt this way too, although we weren't working at the same place at that time, we thought of it as like traditional men's club, like library, like the leather chairs and the bookshelves and dark. And then I thought, well, Harrison's money, and he likes to be like, sort of fashionable in the sense of having the right thing at the right time. And he's a collector. So he would have decorated his library in a fashionable way when it was decorated. So Art Deco in like 20 years ago or 30 years ago, and it's dated now. Like, I love the idea of Art Deco being dated in the 50s, because, how often do you see that? And his son thinks it's like really old fashioned and gross. So that was the sort of a fun idea to play with. And it happened that was one kind of furniture we were able, I wasn't thinking along these lines yet, but thank God we were able to get some Art Deco furniture. And Patty.
Patty, talk to us about the Art Deco furniture, because I know it's actually plentiful. That's the one thing
It
that
is.
it
Yeah.
exists in Eastern Europe.
Well, I would say in Budapest, especially, we were really lucky because there's a collector there who had a gigantic warehouse full of the most beautiful pieces, some more 50s, 60s, but mostly deco. She was a collector of deco. And everything she had was so interesting and so beautiful. So just being in that place, and we had to really do some begging to get the pieces for us to be able to afford them. But she was amazing. And her store, yeah, it was just mind-blowing, actually, when we went in there for the first time. So all of the deco pieces are from her. And not the carpet, though, but most of the furniture, the books on the shelves. I brought a lot of books from Canada because I was really concerned about getting English books. But we got a lot of beautiful collector books in Budapest, and so that was because on the shelves, which you can't see in this shot, but there were these beautiful giant shelves that Judy designed, and they were.
You see them when they're being dismantled, I think.
Right, you see the piles of the books.
Yeah, yeah. And we did have to, all of us, I mean, me and you and the set dressers were going through the books, because there were some really, from the Hungarian prop shops, there were some like junky novels in there that were like from the 70s and 80s and stuff. So we had to just start weeding them out.
Well, it's really hard to do elegant, simple rooms like that. So bravo, because that was really, really stunning. I mean, there was like an audible gasp in the audience when that was revealed. I have a question for Patty. It seems more and more that set decorators are lighting the sets with our practical lamps. How closely did you work with the director of photography, and were there any additional hurdles you encountered by filming in VistaVision?
Well, the VistaVision, a lot of it was shot in natural environment. So that was more with very few lights, because that camera is really noisy. And so it's a whole other thing working with that camera. But when we were doing the interiors, yes, definitely we would show him the practicals. And because it's like, there were a few times when he was describing what he wanted, and they were actually film lights, which Judy can probably remember when we were in the bar. What he wanted was, but people kept saying, well, no, SETDEC does lights. And it was a language thing at that point, because it was literally lights that you would rent from a lighting company.
Sometimes it becomes a gray area. And years ago, we just had lamps that were atmospheric and ambient lighting, but now it's DPs will say, I need this specific, this bulb has to fit in the housing. And so a lot of things are remade. Did you have to remake a lot of lighting to accommodate special requests?
No, we couldn't really we didn't really have the budget to make lighting, but we did we were able to find some nice lighting, weren't we?
Yeah, I don't remember. We did have, he made specific requests, like in the boat when we had those little lights on you don't see it really, but in the opening scene where Laszlo's exiting from the darkness, we did light it a little bit with some practicals, and we created these little lights that went on the bunks and things like that. But they were tiny, and he was very, very good at working with a very small amount of light and making it work. I think he was easy compared to most EPs, especially compared to one. But
well, one of my favorite sets was the furniture store. And I love the furniture that Laszlo created, especially the modern tubular metal desk with a traditional wooden drawer with the Chippendale drawer pull. That really cracked me up. And I love how it was featured prominently in the window. And sadly, probably no one bought it. Were you able to find period furniture to modify, or did you have some of the furniture custom made?
Well, there was the idea that it would be a piece. So for instance, a drawer of a piece might be a drawer that came from one of our pieces of furniture, that his idea would have been that he takes this furniture that his cousin is designing, that he has, obviously can't stand. And he takes a piece of it and turns it into something incredible. But Judy can explain how we turned it into something incredible.
Well, I wanted the idea was that partly that he's being inspired by the things around him, and partly that he's just come out of a culture of extreme poverty, so that he's used to working with nothing, so it's both. Like, he's being inspired by what he sees, which is ugly, but he's also used to reusing and making do with what's there, which I think was a kind of aesthetic of some of the architects and designers of the mid-century movements. Like when you look at Marcel Breuer's personal house, which we did use some pieces from that we built. I mean, that was a reference for us for Lajlo's house. He used cinder blocks for tables, which we also did because it was so great. And, imagining he just found those around a construction site. But anyway, so yeah, the idea was that, and when Patty was shopping the furniture, we made sure she got some multiples so that you could see one nightstand in the shop and then the other was being taken apart to use the drawers in the desk. And, the fabrication was done by the set dressers, right? It was the set dressers that did it. Yeah. And the leather strapping was sort of imitating these beach chairs that we had also in the shop, although you never see them. I thought it was important that everyone understand the concept, and so it made sense.
So they did have really talented crew.
What was the inspiration for the overall color palette? I've heard, Judy, of your impressive collection of period paint chips that you bring to each project. But was there a single painting or other historical reference that you used? Patty, maybe you found something that you brought and said, like, this color palette or the style would dictate the look?
Yeah, I think that in the furniture store, obviously it was the cherry finish, and we knew that it would be they're going to have neutral walls like they did of the period. There's a color that we call Judy green because it's a color that Judy loves. And we had to paint something, and she had her husband bring, what is it that the sample, it was like a mat board from
I did. It was for the architect's desk, right?
Yes.
And I bought what do you call it? The stuff you put on your drafting table.
Oh, that surface, that cushy surface.
I had him bring one so we could copy that green, because I don't have it there, on all the architects' desks in the office. So
that's great.
I know, because he was coming to visit anyway, and they don't, impossible to explain. You can't order anything on Amazon. It takes like 2 months to come. So it was, yeah. So I had him come whenever we needed something. I'm just kidding.
Well, it's good to use your husband as an additional buyer for the project.
Yes, he should get a credit. I had this I guess I could talk about this, but I had this memory the other day that when I was telling someone about Indigent. Did you know Indigent when they were around, that production company? It was a really low budget. The guy that ran it was named Gary Winnick, and he would give directors $150,000. And then one of the first movies I designed was an Indigent movie. And I was telling someone that I ended up making money when it sold, and I had back end and all this stuff. That's why I was talking about it. But I remembered that the DP on the movie was I wasn't experienced, and she was very experienced, and she would yell at me a lot and give me a hard time. And I remember all the movies were shot on video, mini DV, and at the time that was new. And I remember her telling me to only use green, like green is the only color that photographed well on. And I was like, oh my God, is that why I always use green? Like, was I traumatized into using green? So it was this memory that I realized it may have really affected me, but I am really drawn to certain shades of green, and I do think they photograph well, and I think they work for that period really well. And since every movie I do is that period, it might be. But I think for palette, I think that Brady came to me with Salt Lighter. It was not like I repeated Salt Lighter with him, but he came to me and said, I love this palette. And we kind of followed that. I mean, it's a lot of monochromatic stuff, and then some touches of color, but nothing too bright. What's not a very bright world that they're living in, you know, so,
Well, it opens very dark, and
yeah,
then as it progresses, it gets bigger and bigger, and then you see sky, and then you see
yeah,
buildings and stone quarries. So, you know, from the dark and brownness of early on,
yeah.
as lighten up, and I can see, you know, the palette shifting.
Yeah, and it's almost more done with light than with color, you know, which is nice. I mean, well, light is color, but as opposed to like, oh, and now it's bright blue, and you know, it's like it's super dark, and then it is the sky, and then it's underground again, which relates so much to the story. And I think I've never done a movie that was like that before that I can think of, and I like that you pointed that out because it is a good way to think about palette. It's a different way of thinking about it, but it's really accurate.
Well, I've got a question, Judy, for you that relates to set decoration, so it you ties it in together. You worked early on in your career as a set decorator, and I was just wondering if you brought any tools from specifically from set decoration to your work as a production designer, and if you've given her tips, you know, based on your experience.
Well, Patty knows that I'm like sort of a controlling in that way. And if I work with a new decorator, I'd warn them that I'm going to be up in their business. And like, if I have veto power, and yeah, I'm pretty involved with, and I don't think it's because I was a set decorator. I think it's just because I consider it part of the design job, you know, and I know there's designers that work very autonomously from the decorator, and I'm not one of them. Because I just think of it as the whole, it's all one thing, which is why I also like the art department and the set dec department to work together and to get along, because I think of it as one team, and we're all working together to make the sets and to make the visual aspect of the movie. I like working with people that are super talented like Patty, so I can trust them to go out and do their thing, and it's going to be great, and they bring so much to the movie. But I also am going to say, like, you know, if I think something doesn't work, I'm gonna probably insist that it go away.
And go into the set and take things away.
Sometimes the director does that as well.
Yes, and if the director wants something gone, I'm not gonna argue. Like, well, I might if I have a really good reason, but that's rare. So, and but the thing I learned the most from, which doesn't really affect my relationship with the decorator, is I worked as a set dresser a lot, and that was a great learning experience. And because in order, I think, to work effectively as a designer or as a decorator, as anything, you kind of have to know how to do a lot of the things you're asking people to do, and you have to know what's possible. And if I can't figure out, if I'm scouting a location and I have no idea how they would be able to hang curtains, like that library was a little bit of a, you know, I could kind of see how it could be done, but I made sure I could before I said we could definitely do that here. If you can't figure it out, I don't, you know, I don't know if you should definitely say we can shoot there, because you have to be able to at least have a concept of how it could be done, I think. So I'm really glad it wasn't fun while I was doing it most of the time, but I'm glad I had that experience because it taught me a lot. And also being a PA back in the day when you had to work 16 hours a day, and good work habits.
Well, if only every producer and director started out as PAs or set dressers, I think they would have more respect for what we do and understand.
I know. And they should work a year in the art department or the set dec department.
Yeah.
Should
To
be
know the difference between decorators, designers, and art directors.
And props.
Got to keep telling them that. Props is a little more. At least you can say if you touch it, it's a prop. But
yeah, but they don't know that sometimes. Like, it's like props, and it's like set dec. I mean,
no, that's set dec.
Yeah.
Well, Patty, you and Judy have collaborated on many projects over the years, starting with Brokeback Mountain, I believe.
Yeah,
at this point in your professional relationship, do you have a shorthand and know what to expect from each other that you wouldn't have by working with someone for the first time?
Oh, definitely. Well, the thing is, I do really enjoy the fact that Judy's involved with everything with SETDEC, because Judy has this aesthetic that is quite unique. And she also has this, she has a genius, the way that she works and how she approaches decorating and design is so different from people that I work with often.
Normal people. You were going to say it.
So, no,
No
other
one's
people.
normal.
So she has a different approach, and I really appreciate collaborating with her. It's really interesting for me. I'm always learning. When I first worked with her on Brokeback Mountain, I learned so much about how we had to decorate to make, to me, I felt like we were creating environments that would break your heart, because that's what the story was. And we couldn't do much. We couldn't put much in because they didn't have anything. First of all, one of the characters, they're so poor. But it also is minimal. You know, when you're doing period, it's minimal. If you're going to put a lot of things in, it doesn't make sense and it doesn't feel right for the period. And so I learned a lot. And then I also learned how to make things look kind of sad, and, you know, like the way that we dressed and one of Ennis's houses, when Ennis and Alma were living out on this farm, and they had their children there. And it was every time I work with Judy, I learn more. So I love it. It's great for me. And I'm that there'll be another one soon.
Well, it shows, because you work beautifully together from our point of view, watching the movies.
I'd like her to be able to work in the States more.
Well, we're just really lucky.
I guess we'll both be working in Hungary though, so, you know.
Yeah. Well, now a lot of work is going, it's moving. But I mean, I was really lucky on Amsterdam because it was so busy. Well, first it started in Boston, and there was the people from New York that would normally work in Boston were busy.
It was
So
really busy then, yeah.
Yeah, and she was able to bring me, and then it shut down because of COVID. Then when things went back up, I thought for sure, and it was going to Los Angeles, I thought there's no way I'm going to be able to work there. But again, in Los Angeles, it was so busy that they actually permitted me because everyone was working. So it didn't feel like, you know,
Well,
I'm
it
not.
seems so long ago
Yeah.
that everyone was working, but
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I want to say about Patty is, something I really appreciate about her is that she knows the difference between me when I'm working and me when I'm not working. And when she comes over to my house when I'm not working, she's like, "Oh, it's not working, Judy," who's like likes to have fun and go out and do things. And when I'm working, I don't. Like, I don't want to talk to anybody outside of work. And not that many people, including my husband, understand that. So I really appreciate that.
Well, it's
Yeah,
good to
like
hear you don't
we'll
always work too. So that's,
What?
you do have some
Yeah.
downtime.
Yeah,
It's true.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
because Judy waits for projects, like she'll wait and turn down things until she finds
Yeah,
like,
not lately. Lately, I've been waiting too long though. Like it hasn't
yeah,
been
it's hard. It's been hard.
Yeah.
But that's the thing about Judy. We'd be away on location, and you know, you'd be like, "Oh, let's get together. Let's go to this." And Judy would politely say, "I don't know. I think I'm really tired tonight." And I know she's probably not tired. She just does not want to go out and do anything. She just
No.
wants to like be focused on work and
Watch some TV on my laptop.
Yeah.
Patty, even though you shot the entire movie overseas, were you able to use any of the SDSA business members for the project?
No, unfortunately we weren't, because like I said, everything that I brought was I bought it in Toronto. We did talk about trying to do some rentals, but because I know people, when I know a crew that have worked on a show in Romania, and they brought a lot from prop houses in Los Angeles, but we just didn't have the budget for it. So I mean, I would have loved to have done it, and we would have been able to bring some incredible stuff and things that we had a lot of trouble finding, like the tech kind of things, the phones and that sort of thing. But no, we didn't have the budget for it, unfortunately.
And how much prep time did you have? I'm not sure if I got that from you before you started.
Well, before I started, I had a few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of, I mean, I think I started I think it was towards the beginning of January. I think maybe for a week, I just researched and did things on my own. And then I started running around getting all of the set dressing and got it onto the container, and the day later got on the plane and came. And then once I got in to Budapest, what did I have, Judy? 5 weeks? Like, it wasn't very much.
I think,
Wow.
I'm not sure. I mean, I think I had 10 weeks official prep, like in Budapest, and then
Yeah,
maybe
might
like
have
9 or 8, 9. They were pretty good on the prep time. I mean,
Yeah.
compared
I
to
have,
some movies, it was like
yeah.
a $6 million, the production budget was like $6 million and it was really low. So, but they were good, like relatively good on the
Yeah.
times.
Well, everything you did ended up on the screen. So
Yeah, I mean, part of that was shooting in Budapest, and I think a lot of it was, Brady knowing how to know what he wanted, like where to put the money and planning his shots. It's great to work with someone like that because it makes our jobs easier.
well, I read that he had worked on it for like 5 years prior. Like,
I think he'd been trying to make it happen for like 5, 6, 7 years. I'm not sure how long, but yeah, for sure, because I had read about it for a few years and I really wanted to get on it. And it seemed like he had a designer, and then it seemed like he didn't, and then it definitely seemed like he didn't, and then I got the job, and then it went down still. So it was definitely around for a while, and
well, it was meant to be for you, certainly,
it
for
seems
both
like
of you.
it was. Yeah, I'm really happy I got it and that I did it. It was been a great experience, and it's like it's still giving. So really, yeah.
And Judy, also, I think that the way that Lowell shot a lot of things really was in our favor. I mean, he would frame it because it was really tough. There were sets that I felt I was really worried about because I was saying, how can we make this person is supposed to be so wealthy, and how do we make it look like he's wealthy when we don't have the money to spend to do, elaborate custom draperies and things like that. And Lowell framed things so beautifully.
I don't know. I thought he could have gone wider and it still would have looked great. I thought that house
Yeah.
looked really good, Patty. I really did.
Okay.
And I thought all
You
the
kept it
paint,
minimal, but the items, the elements that you had were the right elements. So
yeah. And we
it
did
doesn't
all
have to
these
be just
paintings,
filled with,
like
the
that looked,
Yeah.
beautiful
yeah,
contemporary artwork juxtaposed
yeah.
with the more traditional architecture. It just worked beautifully.
There were some sculptures too that were kind of designed by Judy in a sense, that we had that were really interesting, those sculptures, and that helped it too. Because there would be nothing there, but there'd be a pedestal with this really interesting sculpture on it. And
And all the artwork, the Barnes Institute. I remember all of that stuff. I mean, it was so much. Yeah. But it's hardly any of that's in the movie, but it's fine. It looked good in real life. So.
Is there anything else either of you would like to discuss that I haven't asked you yet or hasn't been covered yet?
Well, I can talk a little bit about my initial creative process, which is that I always draw from a lot of different sources to create a kind of lookbook for the characters of the movie. And because I feel like we're creating their lives in a sense, their visual lives. And for this one, the Harrison's world was one world, but there was also the world of these new immigrants to the United States. And there were some that had been established for a little while, like Attila. And then there were the ones that had just come over who had absolutely nothing. And there's a lot of photographers that photographed urban immigrants around that time, or people that just lived in the city and looked like recent immigrants, like Saul Leiter, who we've mentioned, especially for his use of color and just street life in general from that period in New York and Philadelphia. And I think that those kinds of very spare images that just show the kind of melting pot of New York and Philadelphia and even Chicago are great images for that time period. They show people in a different context than you would see them now, and in a sort of more spare and minimal context. And I just find it really fascinating. And I think you can learn so much about the design of the environment from looking at those. This is a longer story, but I remember, but it relates to how pictures of people can inform the design of an environment. Because when I met on Brokeback Mountain, which was a movie that was actually early in my career, the first thing I thought of was Richard Avedon's In the American West, which is a book of pictures of people and people against like a white backdrop. Like there's no environment in it. And I was meeting with Ang Lee in Los Angeles, and I was bringing that book with me. And my husband was like, "Why are you bringing that book? It's just pictures of people." And I said, "Because it's the movie to me. Like this feels like the movie." So we got to Los Angeles and I'm going to my meeting and I was like, I don't know, maybe you're right. Maybe I won't bring that book with me to the meeting. And he's like, you brought it all the way on here on the plane. You have to bring the book with you. I bring it to my breakfast with Ang Lee at the Beverly Hilton. I put it on the table. He says, where did you find that book? It's out of print. I said, I got it on eBay. Do you want it? And he's like, yes. And he took it. And I think that pretty much helped me get the job. And that turned out to be his main influence on the movie. Like that was a book of images that he loved. So it makes sense, of course, he's the director, he's directing actors, but it was something about the look of those characters and that kind of contemporary working class cowboy that was speaking to me, and how am I going to create their world? So I think that for this movie, trying to create the world for these impoverished, in every sense of the word, immigrants was the starting point. And it's also the starting point for brutalism because it's letting go of history, starting from nothing. You know, it's a huge, literally huge blank canvas, a concrete slate.
And Patty, looking back on the many sets you created, were there any favorites or anything that really stuck out as just really special that you hadn't done before?
Well, not so much that I hadn't done, but I think it was the way that we did it. I really loved the architect's office, and there was nothing especially incredible about the set dressing, but it was rows of drafting tables, but it was just the space itself and the lighting that was already existing in the space that we were at. So that one stands out. The marble, when we're down in the quarry, when we're in the place where they dance sculpture. I love that one because it just felt amazing in there. Like it was just so strange. There were a lot of sets. So I should say there were sets that I haven't done. I do feel like the sets that we did were all kind of strange and unique, but still, I guess, felt like things that we normally work with is probably the answer. Yeah.
But because shooting in Budapest, it's things that most of us have not seen. So you've got that strange, I'll just use the word strange, look to it that looks period, it looks American, but somehow it looks off. And that's because it's not a location that we're familiar with. So it really works.
The thing about this movie too is that Adrian's face just tells so many stories. I just couldn't believe, like, when you just look at his face, so much comes out. It was incredible to watch. And this scene was kind of the first happy moment that you see of him, besides when he first lands in America. It's a happy moment. And, that ends pretty fast, as you know, since there.
Well, it's quite the journey from where it begins to where it ends, and
yeah,
a lot of emotions. And you really, like you said, you see it on his face. I want to thank you again, Patricia Cuccia SDSA and Judy Becker, production designer of this amazing film, The Brutalist. It's been a pleasure talking to you both, and I wish you all the best with award season.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Inside the Set with SETDECOR. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit our website, setdecor.com.